Good evening all, and welcome to this September meeting of the Barossa Assessment Panel. I take this opportunity to welcome members and staff and those who have joined us in the gallery and online this evening. As we do have a gallery with us, obviously, I'll introduce the members to you and the staff, and then we'll move through a few administrative items on our agenda, and then we'll get to our first item for consideration. And when we reach that point, I'll just start running through some details around how the process will work, including the opportunities to address the panel. So the members of the panel that you do have before you this evening, I might start online. So you'll see up on the screen there we have Sarah Elding. We also have Rachel Nucky, Graham Burns, Councillor Jane Evans, and my name is Jeff Parsons, and I'm the presiding member. And we are ably assisted by members of Council's administration that we have with us tonight. To my left is Aaron, our assessment manager. To my right is Tom, one of our senior planners. And to my far left is Chris, who's assisting us with governance and minutes. And we have some other senior members of Council staff with us to assist us in our deliberations this evening as well. So welcome to you. Now, the administrative items first. Our attendance record. All members are present this evening, so there are no apologies. The confirmation of the minutes. The last meeting was held on Tuesday, the 5th of August. All members have received a copy of those minutes. Are there any questions in relation to the minutes? No?
I raised one matter and about...
Might have used your microphone, sorry.
My apologies. I raised a very minor matter, grammatical. The word fan I hope, has been replaced with the word fans, because there are three frost fans, not one. It's just a matter of clarification. But apart from that, I was happy with all other aspects and contents of the minutes.
Thank you. Thank you for picking that up. You might just have to resolve the microphone.
And thank you to the administration for amending the minutes accordingly.
You did break it, Graham. Don't know what he did.
Mine really like cable or not.
Sarah, can you hear me?
Oh,
Okay. All right. Well,
Yes, loud and clear.
Great. Well, we'll continue on, even though it's green. So, sorry, members of the gallery.
I must have fixed it.
Just confirming that was all working well. Well, I was at the point where I was going to ask for a mover that the minutes be adopted. Do we have a mover? Yep, Graham, thank you. Is there a seconder?
Yeah.
Seconder, Rachel, thank you. All those in favour, please raise your hand. It's carried unanimously. Now, there are no business arising from the minutes. So, is there any declaration of interest by any member of the panel for the items before us?
No.
Right, now that does bring us to our first item for consideration this evening. So I'll just introduce the item first, get some comments from our staff, and then I'll take the gallery through how this process will work. So this is an application for construction of building additions to an existing shop in the form of a butcher's shop, including demolition of existing veranda, construction of new veranda over the footpath, and installation of one advertising sign. This is located in the Mount Pleasant Main Street in the Township Main Street zone and in the Township Neighbourhood zone. Performance assessed and publicly notified. Tom, is there anything you want to take us through as an introduction to the item?
Yeah, so the application was subject to public notice. We had one representation received, which is to be heard is here tonight. In addition to that representation, they've provided a separate photo which I believe the panel and the applicants have been provided a copy of. In addition, you'll see throughout the report there's a few little aspects in relation to heritage and vehicle parking and all those types of matters that have been addressed by the applicant.
Thanks, Tom. Sorry, I'm recovering from a slight bit of cold, so blow my nose occasionally. Thank you for that. Now, as we've just heard, there is a representative who's addressing the panel this evening, and the applicant's here to respond. So the way that this process works is that the panel has been provided with a report from the administration in respect of the application, and that report recommends that planning consent be granted. The hearing of representations process really enables anyone who's lodged a valid representation and indicated a desire to be heard to speak to the panel in support of that representation, and then the applicant has an opportunity to respond. Representatives and applicants have 5 minutes within which to address the panel, and I do normally keep track of time. That's just so I can provide procedural fairness to everyone. If you do get close to that point, I'll just ask you to begin summing up. It's important to note that the panel does have copies of the written representations received and the applicant's response. That's formed part of our agenda, so we've had an opportunity to read through all of that and consider that. So this is really an opportunity to highlight those key points that you'd like us to consider. The panel may have questions when you're finished, so when it is your turn to speak, I know we have the representatives at the table here in front of us already, so when it is your turn to speak, I'll just invite you up to the table here, and once you finish speaking, I'll ask the panel if they have any questions for you, and then once that process is finished, you're welcome just to return to the seats in the gallery here and observe the decision-making process. The meeting is open. We don't go into confidence unless we have to discuss legal advice or something of that nature. Often the panel does have more questions for the applicant than the representatives. That's simply because the applicant has detailed knowledge of the proposal and we might need to delve down into that. Once you've spoken, there's no further opportunity to address the panel for either the representatives or the applicants. But like I said, you are welcome to stay and observe the decision-making process. And at the end, once the decision's been made, I'll run the gallery through what that decision is, and then you're welcome to address any questions to the administration the next business day. The panel's role is not one where we need to mediate between the parties to try and find a suitable resolution. We have to take all the information that the administration give us and the information that you provide us with and use that to make a balanced planning judgment. And finally, if you've never done this before, it can be daunting, but there's absolutely no need for it to be. The panel is genuinely interested in what you have to say, and like I said, we use that information to help us. So take your time, there's water there, and we welcome any comments that you wish to make. So, all of that said, I do, as I said, understand I have the representatives, Mr. and Mrs. Keynes, in front of us here, already seated at the table, so that's convenient. So I'm happy to hand the floor over to you now to run us through your comments. Yeah, feel free just to press the little, I'm sure the staff can help you if need be, but there's a little button on the bottom there that should turn on.
I just want to speak for a second. My wife has the better memory. She's the better reader.
Isn't that cool?
And make sure it's on.
She's the
Rachel.
better reader.
It's on, yeah.
Beautiful.
It'll light up.
Yeah, it's
No.
red.
Oh, cool.
And so I'm 90, nearly 92, and George Ann's 86. We are not going to remember what has to be said up here. So before we start, it's on paper. Okay. George Ann?
Thank you. When we leave our property to turn left or right because of the street trees, parked cars and trucks, and the butcher's numerous advertisement signs, we do not currently have clear line of sight of traffic from the right until we're already onto the roadway and at risk of collision from passing traffic. I have had an occasion to stand on the roadway to tell Peter when it was safe to exit. The amount of on-street parking is clearly inadequate for the butcher and some lazy customers. Parked vehicles of shop customers often overrun our driveway and prohibit our exit and clear line of sight of passing traffic. By the time our driver can see the traffic to the right clearly, he's already on the roadway in the path of oncoming vehicles. This proposal before us would allow possible harm to those coming along the footpath from the shop when we leave our property. The passers-by, shop customers, mums with prams, children on their bikes or scooters, people using walkers or gophers. And the increased danger from such a proposed extension to the shop would be a most undesirable outcome to public safety. I mentioned briefly setback of 1 metre is what I believe you have in your paperwork. How exactly does the proposal that we have before us actually fit into that context? The proposed wall would be a common boundary and it would abut the footpath. Now, this doesn't fall well with how premises are currently built in Mount Pleasant. It would limit sunlight and ventilation onto our place. It will limit the amenity of our block and would most likely have a deleterious effect on the value of our property. My next section is written by Peter, but I will read it. It's a story. The nose of my car's at the front of the drive, but I can't see clearly to the right. I turn on my indicators, sound the horn, and move slowly forward to have a view along the footpath. And I see parked cars, SUVs, and a tree or two blocking my sight. I don't have clear view of the oncoming cars, trucks, B-doubles, buses, and so on from my right. I do hope to avoid the people on the pavement coming from my right. I realise at this moment that we are very vulnerable and an accident must be prevented. So Pete creeps his car slowly onto the road and is just missed by a passing car or a parked car which dashes out from the parked position. Thankfully, the next vehicle on the road has seen the problem, stopped and signalled Pete to join the main road in safety, if he has been lucky. As Peter says, I am a husband and a father who takes my responsibilities to protect my wife and family seriously. He questions whether this is the kind of stress he is going to have to live with were this project to go ahead. We ask again, would it reduce the value of our property in a future sale? Why would any future purchaser want this kind of problem to be able to exit his home? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. and Mrs. Hayes. You made your points very well, spoke very well, so thank you. Members, do you have questions you would like to ask? Yes.
I've got a couple, but before we do, would you mind explaining briefly why this photo's been placed?
That is when you come to the footpath, which is on your right.
Yes, I know where it's taken
Yeah.
from, but I want to
And
know
the
why.
parked car situation. If that is full at the time, you will have
No
no
sight.
possible chance of seeing what's coming on your right. Absolutely impossible. I've had to wait up to anything like what seems like an hour, but
Not really.
probably only a couple of minutes. But it's the fear that goes with it. And the fear would be the same, not just because I'm 90 odd, it would be the same for anyone sitting in my seat at the time,
We don't like the idea of running over anybody.
or being hit, because evidently I've talked to the police about it. Anyone hits me, I pay the bill. I'm a pensioner and I can't afford to pay bills like that.
Thank you. Now, a follow-up, and that I wanted clarification of that point, and you've made that very well, thank you. Do you enter, or more particularly, do you leave your driveway reversing, or do you go out in a
Going
forward
out
direction?
forward.
Sorry, forward.
I go out forward.
Forward. So that would be much better, would it not, than reversing?
Well, you
We
can't
never
go out
reverse.
backwards.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
I do know members that administration has assisted us by providing one of their civil engineers, Richard Cocker, who's with us, so we can pose some questions potentially around that to him when the time comes.
Thank you.
Do we have any further questions for Mr. and Mrs. Keynes?
No, it's fine, thank you.
No? Okay, so thank you. So I must ask, if you don't mind, I need to invite the applicant up to the table now, so if you wouldn't mind just heading to some of the seats in the gallery, that would assist us greatly, just so I can invite the applicant up to the table.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I understand we have members of the applicant coming before us. Can I just ask you just to introduce yourselves, just so we can have a record for the minutes, and you're welcome to respond when you're ready.
Hello, I'm Lewis Glastonbury. I'm the lead designer on the project. I don't have any specific response to the representative, but if there was any specific questions, I'm happy to help out.
We don't hear.
G'day, I'm Jamie Hyland. I'm the owner and director of Jimmy the Butch Pty Ltd, and we trade as Mount Pleasant Butcher.
Sure, thank you. If you don't have anything you specifically wish to address, members, do you have any questions you'd like to ask?
I've got a couple, but somebody else can lead off that one.
No one come into mine yet.
No, Jane, do you have any?
Oh, if I may,
Certainly.
through the chair, thank you. Can you hear me okay?
I can.
Thank you very much. Thank you for coming in today. Just a question in relation to the parking. I noticed in the report it said that, please correct me if I'm wrong, but there will be a diversion for a lot of the deliveries and things to be delivered from William Street off-street parking. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Away from Murray Street?
Yep.
So at the moment, are deliveries delivered from out the front in Murray Street at times, or?
It's actually Melrose Street.
Oh, Melrose, I
Melrose Street.
apologise,
Look,
sorry.
it's probably 95% of deliveries come to the rear access off William Street.
Okay,
We have 5 vans, trucks, etc. ourselves, so we have an acre of land out the back. You get the occasional delivery driver, someone that's different to the shop, but the staff do ask them to come around the back. So most people are trained to come around the back. So
okay.
we have forklifts out there as well. So sometimes you're unloading a lot of boxes and that, etc. So, but yeah, not too often at the front. So occasional one. That's someone that is new to doing deliveries. So.
Okay, thank you.
Sarah, did you have any questions you wanted to pose?
Yes, I do. You all hear me? I guess this question is to Lewis in terms of the design of the facade. I noticed that the height difference in the verandas and also the difference in the existing shop has a bullnose veranda, whereas the new addition has a flat or skillion veranda, and there actually appears on the plans to be a height difference. I'm just trying to understand the rationale for that, if you would like to respond.
Sure. The awning canopy is higher purely from a functional point of view to get some more height for pedestrians walking underneath. It's also nicer to walk into a shop with a bit more height. And we've gone for a more contemporary look, still using the blue and white theme from the bullnose veranda.
If you have further questions, Sarah, you're welcome to keep going.
Look, I guess from my perspective and from a street appeal line of sight, that it sort of looks a bit disjointed. Did you entertain a bullnose veranda, or is it just purely a design consideration to give more height and presence to the new addition?
Originally, we did look at doing the bullnose veranda. We just wanted to clean up the front of the shop without the columns and provide a sleeker, contemporary, modern look.
Okay, thank you.
I should also have said earlier, we also have the council's heritage advisor, Sam Hosking, with us also. So once we've finished hearing from the applicant, we can pose some questions around design to Sam as well. Graham.
Thank you. My question goes back to deliveries, and I think your comment was that the deliveries do take place at the moment from the front, but in future they'll happen from the rear. Just looking at the floor plan, what room will most deliveries go to? They'll go into the rear of the building, will they? They won't come in. They're not required to be dropped off to the front of the building, into the shop front proper, I take it.
Yeah, look, most of the deliveries come in our vans. So we go to Adelaide daily, we do Barossa daily, Adelaide Hills, etc. So we unload them all ourselves. We just get the occasional one that pulls up out the front. We did have a company in Barossa here, Northland Packaging. He was coming out the front with his packaging supplies, because that goes into the packaging rooms and all that, which is at the front of the cottages. We've got him to come around the back now. So, and really there's not much else that gets picked up and delivered at the front, so except for just customers coming and going and purchasing their meat. So most people come out the back.
What I'm looking at the proposed floor plan is there are two rooms at the back. There's the office, except that shows as existing, and also packaging and office area at the rear as well. What I'm trying to get a grasp of here is that the room where most product will be delivered to from trucks? Or, because I ask that because there's the front two rooms fronting onto Melrose Street are described here on this plan as meat processing, which is existing, and new meat processing area, which I assume is part of the existing shop. What I'm just trying to be clear about is that the product, you are comfortable with all product being delivered from the rear, not from Melrose Street?
No, all meat products, hanging beef, lambs, etc., come through William Street. Halfway up the block, we have a big cool room there, so a lot of the livestock, hanging livestock, goes in there. There's a refrigerated container sitting on the concrete that basically takes all the box meat, all the chicken, etc. So that packing area over there, out the back there, the only thing that really gets packed out there is some Metwurst and beer stick lines. Further to say, we also have a small goods facility in Madam in the Mid-Murray. That's where bulk of our small goods are manufactured and packed down there. So more of the high-end machines are down there. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think there are any further questions at this point? No. In that case, thank you very much. Welcome to return to your seats and, like I said, observe the decision-making process. Now, members, we do have, as I said, members of council administration on hand to answer questions from a planning perspective, but we're also, it's also good to have a member of council's engineering team with us, as well as the heritage advisors. So, any questions you'd like to pose? I can invite Richard and Sam up to the table if you'd like to hear from heritage and engineering point of view.
Through the chair, thank you. I just have a question for Tom, just about the car parking in Melrose Street. And as has been presented by the representatives, is there anything that can be done to assist, given foreseeably that there could be an increase in traffic and use of that street for customers? In relation to residents of the area, is there anything that can be done to perhaps maybe block one car space either side of a driveway, or partial signage, or anything to assist with public and access with the road and parking congestion and traffic flow? Is there anything that may be possible? Has that been discussed or canvassed or closed? Have I missed it in the report? Sorry if I have.
No, that's right. Thanks for the question. Yes, so there are measures that can be applied for through standard requests through council. So obviously for line marking and for signage to be installed in certain places. Obviously, that's not tied into the planning process. So it would have to be a separate request through. I'm not sure the full ins and outs of that process. I think Richard might have some further insight to that. But yeah, that's a process would need to be considered by but through the infrastructure and environment side of council.
Thank you.
Thank you. Richard, do you mind if I invite you up maybe just to the table here so you can speak into the microphone so we can make sure
You're right.
Been sitting too long.
Sarah can hear you? Because James obviously had that question, but I suspect a few other members, including myself, had a similar question, which is, yes, I guess, has this been looked at in terms of the driveway visibility, and if I guess if there were concerns in that regard, what sort of process would be required in order to work out whether it's problematic or not? I think the microphone's back working again, so somehow you've solved it. So.
By introduction, Richard Cocker, engineer here with the council, and thank you for that question. And I think the correction was, has parking been considered? In short, I don't think it perhaps has. However, the proposal that I've seen mentioned in the statements, the written statements from the representative regarding possible changes, that can certainly be addressed, and as Tom just said, would be a separate process outside of this application, of course. But we're more than comfortable or more than happy to consider any proposal, whether that be a bit of line marking, changing to the spaces, or things that may improve the situation, and all that said, of course, without promising any necessarily particular outcome. However, always willing to look and consider what may or may not be possible.
Thank you.
Sure, thank you. Members, do you have any further questions while Richard's with us from an engineering point of view?
I do.
Sure. Well, I think Graham just had his hand up first, and then I'll come. So
Yeah,
Graham
that's
first, and
right.
then I'll come to you,
Thanks.
Sarah.
Richard, the suggestion that was made by the neighbours, or the comments at least made by the neighbours, the representatives, raised concerns about line of sight, leaving their driveway, looking right, blocked by a vehicle. This is outside the ambit of this application, I think, because the road is under the care and control of the Transport Agency. Is that correct? Not the council? Correct. But do you think there is any merit in having a no parking or no standing zone where, if you've seen the photo provided to us, where that vehicle is parked now, simply to improve line of sight for vehicles exiting the driveway from the house next door?
Need the microphone on. Sorry, I can't hear.
Sorry, can you hear me now? Yes, there's always merit in considering that sort of thing. The line of sight issues are predominantly, what's the right word, administered or controlled or prescribed by Australian standards, and indeed also Ausroad standards, which are nationally accepted guidelines for road design and et cetera. It's probably fair to say hardly any domestic driveway in Melrose Street, Mount Pleasant, would actually comply with the requirements set down by the Australian standard, which is AS 2890 Part 1. And that's predominantly due to the historic nature of the township, the presence of large trees close to the curb and water table, and just the fact that, yeah, people park there, and I sometimes myself struggle with the reconciliation of the site distance requirement from domestic driveways in AS 2890 with the Australian road rule regarding parking, where in theory, as long as you're not blocking the driveway, you can park pretty much right up to the driveway.
Yes.
Which by default would compromise that site distance. So it is a tough one. Sure. But look, as I said, we're happy to consider any request for a review of what's down there, and if there's a possibility of helping, we can.
Thank you.
Sarah, and then I'll come to Rachel. Oh.
There was just further to that. I was wondering section of road is?
That's posted at 50 kilometres an hour.
It's 50.
Sorry. Now the floor is yours, Sarah.
That's all right. I'm waiting patiently. I have two questions. The first one is relation to the off-street car parking out to the rear of the proposal. Has there been a discussion about a surface treatment? Because I note in the conditions that we're conditioning that they come back with a car parking plan, but noting the Australian standard doesn't always necessarily specify a surface treatment. Was there a discussion within yourselves about potentially specifying a surface treatment? And I'm not specifically talking about bitumising the whole thing because it's a huge area, but some sort of dirt compaction, etc. Was that discussed at all?
Not to my knowledge, although the general engineering requirement would be a durable all-weather surface. Given that it's in close to residential properties, a dust-free environment would be preferred.
Okay, great. I wasn't too sure about the standard. And I guess my second question, and please to the council staff if I've missed something, but was there a stormwater management plan provided?
What was the question, sorry?
I don't believe so at this stage.
The answer from the administration, Sarah, is that no, there doesn't appear to be.
Okay, thank you.
All right, members, any further questions for Richard? No? In that case, thank you very much, Richard. We appreciate you coming along and assisting us with that. Do we have any questions for Council's Heritage Advisor, Sam, on the design elements? Yeah. Sam, would you like to come forward, please?
Sam, my question is only in relation to a comment that was made by one of the speakers. The difference in the canopy height, between the existing canopy height and the proposed. Have you got any comment to make about the difference and why the difference can be supported in heritage terms?
Sorry, I can't hear. The microphone's working.
Can you hear me now? No, it's working when it's off.
Yeah.
From a heritage point of view, we don't want to mimic or copy what's already there. So, in my view, the overall form was close enough that we're mimicking the gable form, which was the main issue that we wanted to replicate and have that rhythm down the street. And the veranda height, to my mind, was close enough and of a similar sort of scale that the height didn't have to match. So it's a small point of difference. So if you're driving past, you'll just see a rhythm of shop front that looks pretty similar, but if you stop and look at it closely, you'll pick the difference and note then that there's an original shop and an addition from 2025. So hopefully it's telling the story of how the building developed over time.
All right, thank you.
Yes, Rachel.
I just have a question further to that. So I guess in terms of symmetry, and like I understand the non-mimicking and you want to be able to tell old from new, but what about, generally verandas are a pretty important element, especially when you've got buildings coming out to the street, like historically they tended to have verandas. I guess for me, it's not just higher, but it's also shorter, like it doesn't come out as far, but also the detailing, like it's got thinner stripes. Like to me, I kind of looked at that and I personally didn't feel that there was a connection, and I thought maybe if the detailing might have been a bit similar in terms of getting that rhythm of the stripes, it might be better. I don't know. I just wanted to, I guess, understand your thoughts on that.
Detailing in the windows and things like that, but the height and the projection, I think, was also based around visibility into the building. So from a commercial point of view, I think they wanted to increase
they might contradict me, but light into the shop so that
Yeah.
people could see as they're walking past. But yeah, I mean, it's a good point about the stripes. I don't think I specifically thought of that. I'll take that one on notice next time.
Sarah, you had some questions around design. Do you have anything you'd like to ask?
Look, I think, I mean, I understand and I accept the advice. I guess from my point of view, and this sort of goes on for our previous question, which is the symmetry and looking at it. But what now I'm also concerned about is the stormwater runoff. You've got a bullnose veranda, which obviously is sloped on three sides, and then you've got a skillion arrangement. You're going to be walking underneath the veranda. You're going to be hit with a bit of rain in between, but I guess we'll wait till the stormwater management plan comes, unless there's a solution that's stopping that I can't actually read from the plans. Happy to hear what you have to say.
There is a drainage plan for the building.
There are downpipes against the building, so the water is coming from the veranda back to the building and then running down.
Yeah. Did you hear that, Sarah?
Yes, I did, but that's okay. I'll raise it further.
Sarah, just further to what discussed, the applicant has acknowledged that there is a drainage plan as part of their package of drawings. There's not a full engineered stormwater management plan that's been prepared by, or not that I've seen from a consulting engineer, but there clearly will be a drainage scheme for the development, and that will comply with relevant Australian standards and so forth and be appropriately drained. I guess we internally had some discussion about more broadly for the whole site whether it was necessary or appropriate to request a full stormwater management plan for the whole site, because the extent of the building work on the site is actually quite limited, and acknowledging that the majority of the site's already established in terms of its current use. So we felt it was not necessarily appropriate to re-engineer the whole of the stormwater system on the site. But we did, though, suggest that there needed to be at least some more order around the car park. That at the moment there's no formality at all to the car park, and that we felt that there at least needed to be some delineation of the car parking spaces, noting there's also deliveries at the rear. So I guess that just gives a bit more context to that matter of stormwater and traffic.
Thanks, Aaron.
Any further questions for Sam, members? No? In that case, thank you very much, Sam. We appreciate you coming along and assisting us with that. Do we have any final questions we'd like to pose to the planning staff? Yes, Rachel.
For you, Tom. You know how there's two existing signs at the bookends of the current veranda? Are they going to stay? Obviously one will probably not, because you won't see it because you have the other canopy. But is that going to stay? Because overarchingly it's about, trying to improve the situation, getting some good signage. I can see where it's at.
No, I guess there's no comment, well, from what I've seen. You're going to have to forgive me that because our consultant planner did draft the report, so I haven't had a good depth recently. But yeah, as far as I'm aware, that those existing signs beyond the ones that would be actually hidden, I don't think there's any comment about removing any further signs.
I think just through the chair, you won't be able to see this, sorry Sarah, but so are you referring to the two signs on the bullnose veranda?
Correct, the ones
So,
on the bookends.
yeah.
So there's one on each side.
Yep.
Obviously the one on that side would probably stay, I would imagine. But the other one, because you've got the canopy, you wouldn't see it. But I just wanted to know, are they staying or not? Because obviously they've got the new, bigger sign, and obviously we want to make sure there's a nice kind of strategy to the overarching signage. So I just wanted to know if that was staying or going.
Does the applicant want to comment? Are you able to confirm?
That sign's been there for 50 years, it's just been repainted, etc. So,
The intent's to keep both.
look, I'll see what happens down the other end with the new buildings. If it doesn't fit, it'll come down. So, but with the new
Sarah, if you didn't hear that, the intention is that both will stay depending on, I guess, how it looks up, if it's approved and constructed with the new veranda element. Members, any further questions for the planning staff?
More of a comment. There's also a finger sign between the two gables of the original building, and I assume that that's part of the signage package that's intended to be retained. And that sign is both double-sided, so it'll be seen from both directions along Melrose, I would imagine.
Thank you for that. All right, members, if there are no further questions for the planning staff, then I seek your views in respect to this matter. We obviously have had heard from the representor and the applicant. We've had and council's administration, which has been very helpful. We have a very good quality report from the administration and a recommendation that planning consent is granted, subject to conditions. What are your views in respect of this item? Graham. Rachel.
I'm happy to go first. Look, I'm going to continue on about all this design stuff because I'll be quite honest, I was a bit caught because, look, I get and understand and accept there should be a distinction between the old and the new. But for me, verandas are a really traditional element of heritage buildings, and I just kind of grappled with some of the desired outcomes and performance outcomes in the overlays and how actually they met those performance outcomes. So, does it reinforce the traditional, like verandas over footpaths, which are key elements of these types of building, which reinforces streetscape character? Is a canopy complementary to a traditional built form? I don't think it's complementary, and I don't think it's of a height that's consistent with the adjacent local heritage building. I mentioned the detailing as well, simple things like the striping of the roofing. I think if we were going to accept a canopy, it would be better to make that striping consistent because it wouldn't draw as much attention to the difference in the design. That's my personal opinion. I guess in the historic area overlay, it talks about a form being consistent. Given this is a really visual element, is it consistent with prevailing characteristics? Like, I just really grappled. I know it's a small thing because I think the building itself is fantastic, fabulous. I don't have an issue with it. I was just really grappling with that veranda element because those columns provide symmetry as well, and I think they are important in local heritage buildings that are built up to the street. I don't know, I welcome listening to how other members kind of see it. I don't have a fixed view, I'm not loving it. But everything else, look, I'm comfortable with the plan, the delivery plan. And I thought maybe that might even be an opportunity to perhaps tackle some of the issues outside of the site as well in resolving some of the issues for the representative about their visibility, like to not get the deliveries at the front, like maybe in that delivery plan stipulate that they're not made to the front of the site, that they have to be round the back. I do agree that the stormwater management, it's an existing use. It's not increasing it to a degree where I think it's reasonable that we ask them for a comprehensive stormwater management plan. The only thing I'd say is if they were increasing the number of deliveries to such a number that it increased that traffic, that therefore I do think that they should put some form of all-weather surface down and it be maintained to a suitable standard and drained properly, because that goes to stormwater quality and I think that is important. So maybe that's something we could address through the car parking plan, which I believe was a reserve matter. So maybe we could stretch that out and talk about the driveway manoeuvring areas as well and make sure that it's appropriately drained and sealed at all times. But overarchingly, I think it's a really good proposal. I don't have an issue with it being to the front. I've just got a few niggly little elements, but I welcome hearing what everyone else has to say.
you want to go next, Graham? Yeah.
Look, I support the application. I think it's been well prepared. I think it's been well supported by both the expert planning input as well as the expert heritage input that we've just heard from. Yes, the building doesn't mimic or replicate the existing building, but as we can see on the screen behind us, the gables are very, very similar, matching, similar in height, similar in the angle of the gable pitches. I don't think the roof behind is of concern because that's an elevation view, not a perspective. The fact that the veranda is slightly higher and the colour banding is slightly narrower than the existing doesn't concern me at all. Again, I think it comes down to a question of being complementary to what's existing by way of what's on the colours of and the shape or style of the existing veranda. I think it does complement the existing veranda satisfactorily. It may not be, look, this development might not be, I'll use the term a Rolls-Royce design, that is, it satisfies and indeed exceeds what is required, but I think it does enough. I think it's adequate and satisfactory, and as I said a few moments ago, it's supported by the experts that have examined it, the council's experts that have examined it, and I think it's deserving of consent. I wouldn't be recommending that any additional conditions be imposed. I think the conditions that have been recommended dealing with stormwater, for example, are adequate to address the concerns that we've raised. On this question of the car park at the rear, my view is that, look, this is a country town. The car park has been there, I assume, for many, many years. It's not perfect, but I think that the condition that is being recommended to deal with the car park is sufficient to deal with any shortcomings of the car park by way of line marking, surface, ponding and so forth. The fact is, in fact, that the car park is not going to be used by customers. Customers are going to continue to park out the front. This is a country town, and it would be unusual for customers to park at the rear as traditionally occurs in many metropolitan Adelaide situations. You would expect customers to park as close as they can to the front door of the butcher shop and go back to their car in the shortest distance possible via the front door along the street, preferably on this side of the road. So all in all, I think the application is fine. In most respects, I think it's very, very good, and I think it's deserving of consent.
Thank you. Jane, do you want to go next, and then I'll come to Sarah?
Thank you, through the chair. I concur with my colleagues. I would personally, as Rachel suggested, like to see more evenness with the patterning and design at the front of the building, but I acknowledge that with our heritage expert it wasn't stipulated as absolutely an essential requirement. It would just be nice for consistency, I think, given this building is an extension of a pre-existing heritage building and the same business. It would be lovely to have the veranda posts painted black as the same as the existing heritage building, just to give that connection and perhaps consistency with the stripe pattern. That's just my personal view. Thank you. And I think there's a lot of merit to this application. The report has been quite thorough. From a, I suppose, public safety issue and reasonable person consideration, I just have a few concerns about the car parking in the streets, and I understand and respect that this is largely outside the realms of this application, but I would like to have confidence moving forward that our representatives would be able to approach council as discussed initially and have some support there and see what options might be available to delegate on their behalf what can be done to assist them with their safety with exiting and entering their house property off of the road with car parks, how they currently are situated. I'd like to see some changes there if possible. That being in mind, I'm happy to support the application and hope that something can be done with the street parking in the future. Thank you.
Thanks, Jane. Sarah?
Look, I concur with Rachel, I guess, and also Graham to a certain extent in the sentiment with the veranda. if you know the I guess continuation of the bullnose isn't palatable, then at least get the facade treatment consistent, so that your eyes aren't drawn to the differentiation in height or veranda treatment. So I think that's just something that's probably outside the realm of a condition or the like, but I think that's just really important for enhancing that street appeal and the local heritage character of those two buildings. It would have been, my preference would have been to have continued a bullnose, but I understand and accept and acknowledge the professional advice of the heritage advisor. I also think, in terms of the facade of the new addition, the curvature of the lower half of that addition and the entryway, I think that's a really great design solution to soften the additional interface, that public-private interface. I think the use of the tiles and the glass is really consistent with buildings of that era. You look at all the pumps, etc. They've all got washdown out the front, and won't go into the history of that. But there's a reason for that. So I think that was a really great outcome. I am concerned about the car park out the back. Probably because more for the safety of people delivering, deliveries, getting stock on site, getting stock off site, and for the employees. So I think that's a really great solution, as it expressed in the reserve matter, and the condition to ensure that there's a car park management plan. But I am sort of debating whether or not we need to be a little bit more specific about the treatment as well. And just finally, I really think it would be beneficial not to busy that carriageway of the footpath with additional signage, A-frames, etc. And I think that's just a consideration that we need to put forward, whether that's an advisory note, because on the building itself, what they've proposed is quite a substantial amount of signage as well. That's all I have to really say.
No, thank you. And look, I have similar views, members. My views align quite a lot with Graham's. I guess, first of all, I just want to say thank you to the representatives and the applicant for assisting us in our process. I was satisfied. The proposal wasn't seriously at variance. The land use isn't changing, and I don't think it undermines the character values of the district. And look, I think from a heritage perspective, the way I've tended to look at heritage is that when you've got additions to existing heritage buildings, or when you've got new development in a heritage area, I think it's necessary that development is complementary to the heritage elements of the existing built form, or of built form in the area, without mimicking it. And I think the proposal does that, in my view. I think it's a modern take on the traditional elements, and I think that's what should be proposed. I think Sam used the term the evolution of the building, and in my view, that's exactly what should be undertaken. And so I actually quite like the design. My view was that I thought it really achieved what should be sought in the the alteration of heritage buildings. So that was my take on it. I thought the built form, the other built form elements, I guess, in terms of setbacks and design and so forth, were all reasonable. The hours of operation weren't changing, were reasonable. I didn't have a concern with the access arrangements or the parking area at the rear. I agree that parking areas that might be compacted rubble or gravel are common in the locality, and I don't think that's particularly problematic. The staff can correct me on this, but I imagine that if dust is an issue, and if it's not forming part of a specific condition, then the Local Nuisance Act might be able to be used in the future if there's a particular problem around dust. So I don't think that's problematic from my perspective. I was satisfied with the existing conditions. And I would echo Jane's comments around the main street and I guess impacts on visibility. It certainly sounds as if there's an opportunity for the representative to discuss that further with the council, separate and outside of this process. And that doesn't guarantee an outcome, as Richard suggested, but there's an opportunity there to at least have a discussion around that. So they were my views. I'm in your hands. As I should have said at the start, there are 4 reserve matters in addition to the conditions. I guess thank you, Aaron. There are 2 recommendations before we get to that, so thank you very much. So the first is a recommendation that the proposal's not seriously at variance. Do we have someone prepared to move? Thank you, Rachel. Is there a seconder? Seconded, Jane. Thank you. All those in favour, please raise your hand. It's carried unanimously. Then we have a recommendation that the proposal doesn't undermine the objectives and the character values of the Character Preservation District. Do we have someone prepared to move? Jane, thank you. Is there a seconder? Sarah, thank you. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That's carried unanimously. And that does bring us to, I guess, our main recommendation, which is the one around whether planning consent should be granted to the proposal. Is someone prepared to move that, or does someone wish to move a slightly amended version? I'm happy to take you as the mover, Graham.
I'm prepared to move.
As is? Yep. Thank you. Is there someone prepared to second that? I'm prepared to second it, which I think I am able to do in accordance with our meeting procedures. So I'm happy to second the recommendation. And that means...
I'm just looking at the reserve matter around the car parking and whether or not, because I know we've all talked about the access as well and the all-weather surface. Like, were we saying that we were comfortable with it is as it is, that we wouldn't expect that surface to be... I mean, it's not really an upgrade. It would just be a bit of scraping, I would have thought, and a bit of a top, like 150 mil, like, of something, compacted rubble put down, like an all-weather surface. I don't know, like, was that something that we could add, and would members be comfortable with that? Or was the premise that I think you had stated that you thought it was fine as it was, and I think Graham had the same opinion? Because I'm just thinking that reserve matter, that would be the only thing that I'd think if we were minded to alter that to say the car parking and associated driveway manoeuvring areas shall be, you know, of an appropriate all-weather surface to be maintained at all times.
Yeah, I'll answer that through the chair. I've got some photos on the screen, and these are obviously photos taken during the site walkover prior to the report being prepared. The majority of the car park area and the access is already of what I would suggest is all-weather. It's gravel, but there are some areas that aren't. For example, this photo here, which does show, you know, cars parking on essentially bare earth, and probably in some conditions of the year they're probably pretty not really functional to use. So welcome feedback from the panel members. I guess there's a question about, like, is that how much of the surface is creating conditions that relate to off-site impacts that are legitimate planning issues, as opposed to maybe issues that are experienced more so for staff, and it's probably as much a management issue for the owners. I guess that's probably the question for the panel. It would be desirable to clearly see it be an all-weather car park. I think it would be good to see, but I guess the panel have to be minded that they're not overreaching into things that maybe carry an existing use. Probably the approach I took here was that with the potential increase in deliveries and possible uplift in the site, there isn't need to, I guess, have some delineation around the area for manoeuvring, because clearly there's some tensions within this area relating to delivery of stock and unloading and loading versus the car parking, and the best way to manage some of those issues that can spill out into the street to have some sort of layout that can be approved and to work to an Australian standard.
I wouldn't mind following up from what Aaron's just said, because I completely agree with what Aaron said. But I think the other point we've got to keep in mind here is that this car park, and the photograph that we can see on the screen behind us, has got some vehicles parked there, but I assume all of those vehicles are employees of the business. They're, as the point I made a few moments ago was that, that customers wouldn't be using this car park in the traditional sense. They'd be coming to the front and walking in the front door of the butcher shop. And I think that's, that movement pattern will be reinforced with this application. The second point I'd make is that we've got a condition 6 in the recommendation before us that talks about parking, and that it be appropriately designated by way of wheel stops and line marking. I think that's going as far as it needs to go, given that this car park in future will be used only by, or primarily by, shop workers and people associated with the business, as distinct from customers. The other point, perhaps the final point I'll make on this point, is that I've not seen any evidence or anything written in the documents that have been put before us by way of complaints about the condition of the car park, that it's deteriorating, that it's dusty in summer and so forth. But I think if there's at least some line marking as per recommended by condition 6, those sorts of issues, if they were to arise, could be substantially addressed. Remembering this is an application for alterations to the building, I think we're pushing our luck a little bit, to be brutally frank, by requesting improvements to what is a very long-standing car park in the absence of any evidence that suggests that it's not performing satisfactorily now. But having said that, I certainly support the imposition of condition 6 that I've just read to you a few moments ago, in concert with the reserve matter that deals with the car park. So I think the car park is really not the main game with this application. It's important, but I don't think it's the main game, such as to warrant further sealing, dust suppression and so forth. I think line marking with wheel stops and or other barriers to delineate those spaces is going to be adequate.
And I guess just to explain why I seconded the motion, is that I agree with those comments, but I also thought that having a grassed area can assist with stormwater infiltration as well. Obviously, if it's gravel or compacted rubble, it'll still allow infiltration, but perhaps not to the same level. Having a grassed area does also assist with minimising dust, and I also think that it's the type of car parking arrangement that you might typically see in a country town. But I did also agree with the reserve matter and the condition, because it's important that the manoeuvring areas are all weather and accessible, and that's what the reserve matter requires. And then condition 6 obviously helps with just making sure those parking areas are designated, which I think is beneficial. And it's true that grassed areas might not be able to be used in weather like we had last Friday, but for the most part they'll be usable throughout the year, and I think that's reasonable. So that was my rationale. So I guess you've heard from the mover and seconder on why they were prepared to move it as is. Does anyone else wish to comment, or are you happy for me to put that matter to a vote? Yes, Rachel.
Just like to make further comment. Look, I don't disagree. I think that's a very rational approach. I guess, should it become an issue where there's drag out from, when things get boggy, because grassed areas get boggy when it rains. Working in a regional environment, I kind of know this quite well. It can get boggy, but we can deal with those matters outside of the planning process through the local nuisance. So if things like that do become an issue, I still think there's a mechanism. So it's probably not a deal breaker. I think you mentioned the reserve matter because you talked about the manoeuvring, but the reserve matter only talks about delineation of the car parking layout, delineating and detailing the line marking. So I don't know whether or not you wanted to think about adding something to do with the manoeuvring areas, because it talks about lodge and have approved an amended car parking layout detailing line marking, blah, blah, blah.
I think I was getting slightly confused with condition 5, which also talks about the manoeuvring area. 5 talks about the manoeuvring area, but being kept clear and unobstructed. But look, I probably still have the same view. I think it's adequate as it's currently written. Yeah.
look, I agree. I kind of agree. It's like, for me, it's not really something I'm going to get fixated on. I mean, it would be great in an ideal world, but I think the application has merit as it stands. And it's a long-standing existing use. It probably will have similar patronage. Some deliveries may be a little bit more, but it's not going to be such that it's going to, have a drastic impact.
Right, members, I'm not seeing any other hands raised, so perhaps with that, we have a mover and seconder. I'll put it to a vote as is. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Well, that's carried unanimously. So that means that planning consent is granted to the application. So just to explain to the gallery, as I said, planning consent has been granted, but it is subject to those reserve matters being satisfied and also the conditions which need to be adhered to. Obviously, building consent and development approval are also required before the development can take place. If you do have any further questions about that process or any questions about the panel's deliberation this evening, you are more than welcome to address it to the planning staff, Aaron and Tom, tomorrow. They'll be more than happy to assist you. And to the representatives, it sounds as if there's potentially an opportunity for you to open some discussions with Council's engineering team around that access way. So I'd certainly encourage you to do that. Now, we do have one other item on our agenda for consideration this evening, and we need to move to that now. So you are welcome to stay with us if you'd like to observe that. You're also welcome to leave us at this point too. So thank you very much for your attendance and input. You really assisted in our deliberation of that item, and I hope it's been open and available for you all to see the process. So thank you. We appreciate that. Now, members, we do need to move to our second item. So this is an application for construction of a two-storey dwelling addition and alterations to existing single-storey dwelling, including partial demolition of the existing roof structure. It is located in the established neighbourhood zone and was performance assessed and publicly notified. And the recommendation here is that the application is refused. Tom, do you have anything you'd like to take us through as an introduction, please?
Not much to add. It's an application for a two-storey extension to a existing single-storey dwelling. I guess it's in a historic area and it has a few overlays that, like historic areas, it's probably not in the most historic part of Angaston. So, there was some concessions there, but I guess the fundamental issue is an area that primarily seeks single story. It was very hard to kind of have the opinion that it was appropriate. So, other options, there have been situations where there's other dwellings in other areas that have taken a single dwelling form with a second story, and on occasion they have obtained approval, but in this case it seemed a bit too difficult to make that judgment from our side of things.
Now, members, understand we didn't receive any representatives who indicated a desire to be heard, but I understand we might have the applicant with us, Ms. Horder. So do you have any questions you would like to pose to the applicant? Yeah, Ms. Horder, would you like to come forward just to the table there?
Thank you. I've been out to the site so I can see where your house sits in relation to the surrounding houses, and there are no heritage houses nearby. So being compatible with the heritage side of things doesn't concern me, but I certainly take on board what's been said in the planner's report, which I assume you've read the report, you understand where it might be heading. I'm not saying it is heading. Can you just explain to me what discussions what you've considered by way of options to take account of the council's concerns about the two-storey appearance of this building? I can understand, I think, the need for additional floor space, but can perhaps give me a better understanding of where you and your designers are coming from with the design that you've presented to us.
walkway down the left-hand side of the house. We have no rear access. We have properties backing up to our property, which are both, all three of them are two-storey from the street. We don't have the option to build out the back, unfortunately, as we don't have the space, and also being on a reverse sloping block, that would mean that we're actually building to a point where we see even further into our neighbours' yards. So that was not something that we wanted to entertain, nor could we actually get access to our builders to be able to get down there with equipment. As I said, we only have a small walkway on the left-hand side as access. From the front, it's also been put to us, would it be possible for us to build out towards the roadway? But being set back down on the block, that would mean excavation, and it would also put the front of the house almost, I think it would ended up being 700 mil below roadway, which would mean that most of our windows were looking into a retaining wall and seeing tyres go past, which obviously is not great for a resale perspective, but also for the aesthetic. The front of the house wouldn't be doesn't have that street appeal if we were to build forward. We've also had a look at building within the roof cavity. The roof cavity is not actually all that big, so the space that we require in order to make our extension worthwhile wouldn't be gained by doing that. I think it ended up being that we would gain a 2.2 by 1.6 metre space on the second level within the existing roof line. So obviously with costs involved, that doesn't actually help us out. We are looking for an extra bedroom. We're a 5-person family in a 3-bedroom home. I've been there since 2013. I've grown up in the area, and we have been looking to buy, but properties at the moment, prices have skyrocketed, so that limits our options also. We're a 3-bedroom home, 5 people. 4 bedrooms would be the minimum, but in order to be able to get the extra bedroom upstairs, we need to get rid of 2 of the bedrooms down below in order to be able to put in a staircase or access to the top level, which means then we need 3 bedrooms up the top to make it a 4-bedroom home. So we have exhausted so many options and so many points where we could make a change to the design, but where this is really our last shot at staying within the area with my family. Thank you.
This is not really relevant, but have you discussed your plans with your neighbours? Because we haven't received any feedback from your neighbours, that's all.
Yes, I have. We're really lucky with the street that we're on. We're all actually quite close. We have a street party at the end of the year for Christmas, and I've had discussions with not all of them, but certainly 3 out of the 9 houses, I think, that were in the locality that's in the proposal. No, everyone's just understands where we are and pretty excited the fact that we've put it forward. But no concerns have been raised to myself or to my husband, and of course to council in response to the public notification. I think there was only one in regards to possibility of asbestos, but we don't have asbestos because we've already had a look at the property. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions for the applicant members? No? In that case, thank you very much, Ms. Warder. Really appreciate it. You have any questions for the staff members? Yes. Yep.
Thank you, Jeff. Yeah, Tom, to follow up really to the question I put to the applicant, have any, by way of alternative designs, been considered by staff or suggested by staff to the applicant as to what would be acceptable?
As part of the process, how we got here is I did highlight the options of how to proceed following when we determined what our view was. It was clear that they, intending to go for this design, like you've heard from the owner. Obviously, if this was refused as recommended, we'd definitely be happy to consider a forward extension. I know that that's not ideal in the circumstances she's just raised, but from our point of view, that would be one way of, I guess, creating more floor space, noting that this house is well set back compared to the other houses on the street. So, we would be accommodating to that type of thing. It's one of those tricky ones where we don't, as planning staff, we don't necessarily disagree with two-storey development, but it's just when the policies don't really support it, it's very difficult to turn that judgment. So, but yeah.
No further questions, members? In that case, I seek your views in respect of this matter. Again, we have a good quality report from the staff, and we've obviously heard from the owner and applicant. And the recommendation is that planning consent is refused. What are your views in respect of this one?
I'll lead off. Share it around. Look, I'm really torn with this one. On the face of it, I can fully understand the planning argument that's been very well presented in the report. When I've looked both at the site and I've looked very carefully at the code, it strikes me that the problem here is that the code has been somewhat ambitious in extending the established residential neighbourhood zone into this area. It just does not make any sense at all, given that there are no heritage buildings within Cooee of this site or this immediate locality. And there are many new buildings in the locality nearby, two-storey, highly visible from the road. And now we're caught by the code provisions that it seems are working against this proposal. If it had been in the neighbourhood zone, not far away, I might add, the neighbourhood zone itself, I don't think we'd be sitting here today talking about this. That's why I'm torn, because it just strikes me that on an assessment of the development against the code provisions, it's very hard to disagree with what's been set out in the report by your consultant planner. But as I said, I'm torn here because I can see merit in what is proposed. We've heard from the applicant, who I think is very genuine and honest in what she's put to us tonight. I have no doubt about that. I'm also certain that there is, the reason we haven't received any representations is because the people that have looked at the application, in addition to having spoken to the applicant, are perfectly comfortable with what is proposed. So I must say I just feel, frankly, sorry for the applicant for being put in this position, because I think the fault lies with the way in which the code has been drafted. And that's not a criticism of any of the planners, the council planners. I think it's the system that, the transition system that this council and many other councils have been taken through from going from the old development plan to the planning and design code. I haven't put forward an alternative recommendation, but I'm of the view that the application shows sufficient merit to warrant consent. But before I get to that point, I'd be very interested to hear what other members of the panel have got to say.
Thank you. Rachel?
Look, I mirror pretty much everything that Graham said. It's a really tricky one, and these established neighbourhood zones are tricky, where they've transitioned across from development plan to code with no actual reviewing really of appropriateness, because there was not that, it was kind of just, well, you've just got to map it across as is. And yeah, they've been caught up in that. And for me, our job is to assess an application on its merits against the code. It's the code policy, like it speaks against it. And, for me, I look at it and the design, they've kind of recessed elements of it. Like, it's a decent design. I've got no issues, and I do feel for the owner applicant. But I just think in doing our job, we have to assess it against the policy that's before us, and taking a look at the pattern of development in that locality. It is predominantly single story in nature. So you just can't. It'll open everything up. Everything will become two-story, and then you go, well, why is it in that zone? So this is more, I agree with Graham, this is a policy issue. This is something that, we might want to flag, perhaps with you, Aaron, as the assessment manager, an issue for council to look at. Zone boundaries and, areas where there's misfits, because I just don't think really there's enough in the policies that I assessed it against to warrant giving consent to this. That's my opinion, but I would love to. It's a decent design. So it's one of those ones that's just tricky. You feel caught. Yeah.
Thank you. Sarah, do you want to comment?
Look, can everyone hear me? I just wanted to point out, we're talking about existing character, and Rachel, I accept your point of view that, once you let one building go, then there begins a pattern. But I draw everybody's attention to the properties behind this particular site, which are all double story. So that seems to be an emerging pattern. Whilst it may be just slightly outside of and outside of those boundaries, the pattern of development is evolving. I also think that the setback of the dwelling coupled with the gradient of the land won't actually create a significant protrusion from a site view from the street frontage. And I think, there are ways you could treat that with additional plantings. So again, I agree with both Graham and Rachel in the sentiment that this policy is a legacy of the transition from development plans to the planning and design code, where planning policy interpretation was a bit muddied. But I actually do think that this application does have merit. And I think that if you look at the street and the variety of houses along the street, they're all, along Dulwich Avenue, they're all very slightly different. They've got different setbacks, different areas of build. I think that, there's sort of merit in lifting that and evolving a new, design outcome. It's a really hard one. I really empathise with your team, Aaron, on this.
Thank you. So we do have a divergence of views. Jane.
Thank you. I must clarify that I am not a planner. I am an elected member on council, but I do think there is merit to the application with the applicant. However, like my colleagues, I do feel absolutely torn, and when I get down to basics with decision making, the facts stand still that we work within a regulatory framework, and the policies don't support the current application as it stands. So it's not to say it can't be amended, adjusted, or reviewed, but as the code provisions are working against this proposal, I just feel that we are caught between a rock and a hard place to support this proposal, and at this stage, unless there's more light that can be shed on it, I really feel that I have no option but at this time, as it stands right here, right now, not to support the proposal and to take council's advice on board with recommendations and consider that perhaps it's something that could be reviewed down the track or soon for our applicant's sake. I do very much empathise with the fact that there's a huge demand for housing at the moment, and growth of a family is a very relevant driver here, and we would love to facilitate that. However, if the code as it stands and the framework that we have to work within stipulates alternate recommendations, then there's, alternate, I suppose, restrictions, there's not much can really do. Thank you.
No, sorry, Graham, through you, Graham. I always, in a performance-based planning system, if you look at the desired outcome of the established neighbourhood zone, it talks about neighbourhoods that include a range of housing types, with new buildings sympathetic, not necessarily consistent, but sympathetic to built form and character. And then desired outcome 2 is maintain predominant streetscape character, having regard to key features. There's no mention of 1 or 2 stories. And as I iterated before, if you look at the building heights, step back and look at a couple of building heights, they're all at different heights. And if you measure from, with the gradient of subject land, the overall building height is actually going to be that much than most of the houses in that street anyway, because they are set back. The existing house is set down slightly more than a couple of the other dwellings. So that's just something in a performance-based system. You work from left to right and up. And I think at the end of the day, meeting those desired outcomes, I think that is actually quite consistent with the desired outcomes of the established neighbourhood zone.
Yes, Graham.
Sorry, Rachel, again. Did I jump in? I totally agree with what Sarah's just said then. Perhaps there is a silver bullet, though, in the code, and I didn't touch on this in what I said earlier, that would allow this application to be approved. If you look at PO 4.1 under building height, for the zone PO 4.1, and I'll read it. Buildings contribute to the prevailing character of the neighbourhood. They don't use the word locality, neighbourhood, and complement the height of nearby buildings. Not match, not exceed, complement. And I think they're the points that Sarah was making a few moments ago. I think there is, in fact, sufficient support in the code. Using PO 4.1, we could look at other provisions, but I don't want to spend endless time going laboriously through the code. But I think there is sufficient support here to argue that the application meets PO 4.1 based on what I've just read to you. And that's, again, one of the reasons why I think from everything we've all looked at this site and we've all spoken about tonight, we're all sympathetic to the design. I think the design is satisfactory in this particular part of the zone. It might not be as satisfactory in the heritage core of the zone, but as I said earlier, there are no state or local heritage buildings or representative buildings in close proximity to the subject land. As others have said, there are many two-storey buildings in this street, or other two-storey buildings in this street and in the nearby neighbourhood, and I'm using the term now used in PO 4.1, in the neighbourhood. So it seems to me that there is support. The code does in fact provide support for development of this kind, given the particular circumstances of the site in relation to its immediate surroundings.
Rachel.
Okay. I agree in part with what you've said there, but then what we've got is you've got the corresponding DPFs, of which we know is one way of achieving the PO, but noting that when they talk about building height, they also talk about level. And this is where it gets tricky, because a level's different to height. But the PO talks about height, but then the DPF talks about height in relation to a level. So I think there's some confusion there, because you have to think about the levels, like, as well as the height. Because I think the height, that's about your floor to sit, like your footings to eaves and to the top of the apex of the roof, whereas your levels is at 1 or 2 levels. They're different things. So I don't know, perhaps we might want to get some guidance from how, from staff's perspective, they actually interpret that provision, because it's not clear. Like, the code has these crazy things in it, and it's like, well, how I guess, as administration, do you deal with that?
Well, I guess you kind of answered it with that last comment you said, where the code just kind of has a few things in there that put through the courts, they get torn to pieces a little bit, and that's just from the drafting of the code, which is detriment from time to time. But yeah, in this case, we've, I guess, depended on the DPF to facilitate how we consider the PO, in the sense that it seeks for one-storey development or buildings of one level, and fully taking on board that the prevailing character of the neighbourhood, and I think the neighbourhood has been a tested thing in the courts, and I don't think they got any clearer to the word. So I can see on both sides, but I guess in this specific streetscape, even though this one says neighbourhood, it's hard to, like I said earlier, it's hard to see how two-storey fits into it. But again, that's up for interpretation, depending on how you look at it and what you think of the code.
Can I just go on from that? Thanks for that. That's really good. And I think what the key is to link it back also to the design, because obviously the performance outcomes link back to the design outcome. And the bit that Sarah, like when she mentioned, it talks about new buildings being sympathetic, not just to the built form character, to the predominant built form character. So you've got to read the words in it as well, because that's giving the guidance then to the POs. So I just think there's nuances.
Yeah, I think further to that, and I agree with comments from Tom as well, that I guess we're looking predominantly at the performance outcome. I mean, that's what the judgments of the courts have said, is we need to determine ultimately whether the development meets the performance outcome. The DPF is a guide, it's a reference point, it shouldn't be given too much weight. Yeah, I guess we've grappled with this one as well, that I don't think there's necessarily, this is a clear-cut one, that we felt there may be differences of opinion with this proposal. Clearly the applicant has explained that there's reasons why they haven't been able to accommodate for a simple single-storey addition. We've predominantly, our approach with these types of proposals is that we've tried to steer applicants down the path of trying to do an addition in the roof space. I think with this type of house, it's probably difficult to do that, as the applicant explained. I think something we also have observed is that because the majority of these properties haven't been subdivided, they tend to be larger, so the site coverage tends to be quite low, and therefore majority of additions have been able to be accommodated at single-storey level. I think there is a tension with the Barossa townships running out of land. There will be a need to look at infill more closely, and we have already started that journey in terms of a growth strategy, and there's some actions that have come from the phase 1 strategy that have said that we need to look at policies in townships around how do they support infill, but there is very much still a tension, and this was a strong feedback from the community about balancing character versus infill and development potential, and there is still a tension there, and I think that still plays out with this proposal somewhat, in that because some people may look at this and say, well, clearly it's a two-storey, it's a single-storey area, why did it get approved? But then there's other reasons that you look at that may be a warrant justification for it. So I guess we will finally balance with it, understand where the panel is going. There's different views.
Thank you. I don't think I've said my views yet, which align with the staff's recommendations. So, and perhaps I'll just explain. I think, and Graham said it very well in terms of obviously the motives of the applicant, although it's not necessarily relevant to our consideration, but they are very genuine, and I have sympathy for that. But obviously we have to assess the application against the code provisions that are in place, and I think we've had some excellent debate amongst panel members about some of the words in the code, and there are nuances, and I know because this was a case in the area that I work for, but there was some commentary in one of the judgments that neighbourhood can certainly be broader than locality. I don't think there was a final position put on it because it wasn't necessary in the course of that appeal, but that was a statement. So I agree, neighbourhood can be much broader than locality. And I often say that there's no such thing, in my view, as maximum heights in the code. While DPFs touch on them, they're simply one way of achieving the performance outcome. They're not listed as part of a PO, and they're the provisions that we have to assess the application against. And I certainly think you can construe PO 4.1 in the zone as obviously taking account of the prevailing character of the neighbourhood, and there is some two-storey examples within the zone and the neighbourhood, in my view. But I'm also drawn to PO 4.2, which talks about alterations and additions not adversely affecting the streetscape character. And to me, that streetscape character is narrower. That is just the streetscape that we're looking at, in my personal opinion. And my understanding is that there's no two-storey on that street as it currently stands. And if the design could have worked such that the second storey was perhaps recessed further back in the roof form from the front of the dwelling, then I potentially would have had a different view. Or if it could have been better incorporated within the roof space, understanding there are, complications with that, obviously, given the way that the dwelling is built at the moment, I likely would have had a different view. Or if there could have potentially been some split level option or something along those lines, then again, I might have had a different view. But I struggled because the two-storey is so, I guess, obvious in the streetscape. In my opinion, it does detract from what that existing streetscape character is. And that was the rationale for my position. I would certainly hope that through exploring other options, there would be another, there would be another design option that would suit. But obviously, that's not our role as a panel to redesign the proposal, and we have to be conscious of that. We have to simply assess what's put in front of us, and they were my views. But I certainly think the debate we've had as a panel is healthy, and it shows that there are different interpretations that can be made, and I certainly have respect for those different interpretations. So my views and my thought process, but ultimately that debate might have altered some members' views it may not have, and we do have a recommendation before us for a refusal. So unless there's any further comment or debate any member wishes to make, I am looking for someone to either move the recommendation as it currently stands or potentially move an alternative. And in suggesting that, I am aware, I think the administration have, knowing that this is finely balanced, prepared some potential conditions and so forth that we might look to if we were of a mind to grant consent. We do obviously have two recommendations before we get to that point. So I might just ask, are there any other comments anyone wishes to make before I get to the recommendations? No. In that case, I will ask whether someone's prepared to move recommendation 1, and that is that the proposal is not seriously at variance with the code. Rachel, you're moving. Thank you. Is there a seconder? Graham, thank you. All those in favour, please raise your hands. And that's carried unanimously. The second is that the proposal doesn't undermine the objects and character values of the Character Preservation District. Someone prepared to move? Yes, Graham, thank you. Is there a seconder? Sarah, thank you. Excellent. I will put that. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. And then we get to our third recommendation, which is that the application be refused. It is very difficult, I agree. I'll ask whether someone's prepared to move that or whether someone's prepared to move an alternative, in which case we might just need to enlist the assistance of our assessment manager to help us with that.
Just to see what comes out of this. I certainly won't be moving that the application be refused for the reasons that I've already given. given that we've got an alternative recommendation, I assume, Aaron, I haven't seen this and nobody has on the panel here. If there is a recommendation that the application be approved subject to conditions, subject to us having a quick read of that, I suspect I'd be prepared to move in accordance with that alternative recommendation, but perhaps to test the mood of the panel members here. We'll see where we stand.
Absolutely. No, thank you. Yes, thank you.
Through the chair, so essentially that refuse changes the grant, and there's 4 conditions that are recommended. So condition 1 is essentially development be undertaken in accordance with the plans. These are all standard conditions, by the way. Second condition relates to materials and colours. The third one is stormwater disposal, and the fourth one relates to upper storey windows. So addressing, obviously overlooking. Yep. So pretty standard. So nothing that was non-standard as such.
I wonder whether one other condition could be added to that, whether that helps other members here. It doesn't really concern me, but a lot of some comments have been made about the adverse impact that the proposal will have on the streetscape. Perhaps another condition requiring additional landscaping in the front yard to not to screen and hide the building, but to soften the appearance of the building as viewed from the street. Now, I haven't got the wording in front of me, but something, a condition along those lines.
Well, like at least one tree that grows to the height of the building or something like that, so it's offsetting that
More than
visual.
one tree for that matter.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
you could have deciduous trees, but with a decent canopy that complements the streetscape as well as this building and other buildings in the
That
locality.
vertical.
Yeah.
I'll just see what I can come up with. So I was trying to find a standard. I'm not sure if I got one, so I'll, but all good. Now, I guess I should add, if that was to be a condition, it would probably be more generic as opposed to a reserved matter, which typically we ask for a landscape plan. It might be appropriate that the area designated as soft landscaping is landscaped and incorporates in the form of semi-mature trees or something to that effect, rather than a fully fledged landscape scheme.
One of the benefits of having a excellent quality assessment manager is that we can ask for some drafting on the fly. So let's see what Aaron can come up with. Sarah, for your benefit, that was just a quick comment around the landscaping conditions mainly aimed at the front yard rather than rear.
Was there a particular number of trees that you were talking to, or was there?
No, I think Rachel, we talked about at least one tree. I don't really want to put a number on it. I think if it was the right tree, it might be adequate.
You could say something like a mix of trees, shrubs and ground covers, including at least one tree, greater minimum height of 6 metres or 8 metres, because what it is, I think we're trying to achieve is offsetting that verticality.
As viewed from the street.
Speed typist, give us a You're like one finger.
Okay, well there you go. The so I'll read this out because you won't be able to see it. Sorry, Sarah. If you can hear me, okay. Within the first growing season following occupation of the dwelling, as hereby approved, the front yard area comprising soft landscaping shall be planted, or shall be landscaped. Sorry. Using a mix of semi-mature trees, and that should be in bracket, achieving a mature height of at least 6 metres. Shrubs and ground covers, the landscaping shall be maintained in good health and condition at all times thereafter, with any disease or dead species to be replaced within the next growing season.
Thank you. So we have Graham as the mover of that alternate recommendation. Is someone prepared to, well, sorry, first of all, I'll say, are there any comments in respect to that and the conditions? Yes, Jane. Yeah.
Through the chair, thank you. So the proposal that's been put forward about the trees that would supposedly suffice the challenges with 4.2 and 4.1 to assist with the streetscaping, is that correct?
Yes, that was the intent.
Thank you. And my only other concerns were that the proposed development is allegedly contrary to also provision 8.1A, provision 10.2, character preservation district overlay 2.2 and historic area overlay provision 3.1. And I would just love some enlightenment as to how these are being navigated with the provisions, recommendations. Is there anything further that can be suggested here by the panel, or my position remains unchanged at this point? Thank you.
Okay, where my thinking's at is this is great that we've come up with a draft condition. However, I know the courts in the past have talked about conditions not being imposed to offset fundamental flaws, and in this case, potentially, it could be the flaw is the code policy. So we need to just be a bit careful with that as well. Thinking, is this, whilst I think it's a great idea, we need to be, I think, asking ourselves, is it masking a fundamental flaw in the policy? And I don't know, that's just where my head's at. So welcome what other people think.
No, I totally agree with what you've just said, Rachel. But I don't think we are at odds with what, if you like, the courts have been saying. If you look at what I said earlier about performance outcome, and what I also said about this particular part of the zone has an absence of heritage buildings and an absence of heritage character. It's atypical of what the established neighbourhood zone is all about, and I think it's an aberration to that extent. So we're dealing with a part of the zone that is consists of modern-ish development, that is 1970s, 80s perhaps housing, where elsewhere the predominant form of development is much older than that. So, and I don't think the concern I had when I first drove down the street was, well, yeah, it's on the side of the road where there's a row of 80s, 70s houses, not all the same, quite different in their looks, in their setbacks, in their colours and their materials, but it's but atypical of the established neighbourhood zone. So I think the concern I had was that most houses, in fact, got quite a lot of landscaping in their front yards, but this one has a little bit on one side of the front yard, but not sufficient. That's why I think the condition that Aaron has drafted will address that concern. I think we'll end up with something that, even though some of the building will still be visible, the proposed building will be visible from the street, it's not going to be in your face visible. It'll be offset by the landscape setting of the building, viewed from the street, which is the most important view of all, in my view.
So just further to that, I think we need to, like what Jane had raised, is all those other provisions that we haven't really focused on. And like, for instance, you've got that PO 10.2, which talks about appearance of development as viewed from public roads is sympathetic to the wall height, roof form and roof pitches of the predominant housing stock in the locality. So I think that's what Jane was saying. There are other provisions that we haven't really talked about, that she just kind of, I think, wanted a little bit of guidance on how we see that.
Absolutely. and look, it's really open to panel members to debate, and you're welcome to ask questions of the administration and of each other. That's a healthy way for a panel to function. Obviously, we do have a divergence of views, like I said before, and ultimately, I think what each member needs to grapple with is whether or not. Obviously, every proposal has to be assessed on its own individual merits. The circumstances of each site are unique. The circumstances of each of each streetscape and proposal are unique, and all of that needs to be weighed up against those performance outcomes. And obviously, different members have arrived at different conclusions. Nothing says you can't change your position in respect of that following the debate. So. We're absolutely welcome to continue comment and debating the item. Obviously, when we've reached the end of that, I'll ask if there's a seconder. So Graham, did you wish to comment? Sorry, I think I interrupted. No. Oh. Sure. Does anyone else have any other comments they would like to make? No? All right. In that case, members, we do have... as I said, a recommendation that has been moved by Graham. Is there a seconder for that? Just to clarify, that is obviously a recommendation that planning consent is granted. Yes, Aaron, sorry.
Sorry, I might just clarify, and I've just revisited the wording here, and I think it's just important to note that in the obviously the front yard at the moment, it is already somewhat landscaped, so the panel might want to be explicit about landscaping. I think what you'd be asking is to landscape the lawned area in addition to retention of the existing other planting. So whether the condition just should be reflective of that. So I might just suggest within the first growing season following occupation of the dwelling, the lawned area shall be landscaped using a mix of semi-mature trees, shrubs and ground covers, in addition to retention of all other front yard landscaping. The landscaping, all landscaping shall be maintained in good health and condition at all times thereafter, and with any disease or dead species be replaced within next growing season. I think that's probably a bit tighter.
No, thank you. Can't see any objections from any panel members to that. And I saw, just before you made that comment, Aaron, that Sarah had her hand up. So I'm assuming, Sarah, you're seconding. Thank you. So there's now the motion that the application be granted planning consent. Can all those in favour please raise your hand? So that is lost. And we will need to reflect that in the minutes. Thank you, Chris. Is someone prepared to move something alternate or original, as the case may be?
I'll move the original. Reluctantly, may I say it's reluctant. I think this is just to ground where I'm coming from. It's more, my decision's based on more of a policy position. And I just think looking at all the code policies, not just the zone ones, like weighing them all up, there's a lot of other things in there that really I think you can use to support the case. I just think this is a broader issue that needs to be resolved from a policy perspective.
Thank you. So Rachel, you're moving the application be refused. Is there a seconder? Seconder, Jane. Thank you. Reluctantly, noted. All those in favour, please raise your hand. All those opposed? So that is carried. So for the benefit of the applicant and owner, the application has been refused. So I apologise, it's obviously not the outcome you were seeking, but that's the decision the panel has made based on the Planning and Design Code policy. Obviously, as you've heard, there's been some considerable debate tonight, and while this panel's not in a position to stipulate what happens from here, it might be worthwhile engaging with the administration further around options that you may potentially have. There are rights of appeal that you do have, and there is a time limit on those. You'll receive documentation from the council, a decision notification form that outlines some of those appeal rights, but there may be other options that you wish to explore, and I'd encourage you to have those conversations. So thank you very much for your attendance tonight. We really appreciate it. We do have a few administrative items to get through, so you're welcome to stay with us or depart. So thank you. Now, members, in terms of the rest of our agenda, there are no reviews of the assessment manager decision. There are no reports in terms of panel updates. Is there any item of other business from the members? Any item of other business from the staff? Yes, sorry. Rachel, yeah.
That's all right. I just thought in light of our debate, it might be good in other business to flag this policy issue so that you've got something when you do your reporting back to council that this is flagged as it, because it is an issue. That was really hard. That was really, really difficult. And I think it's something that this panel needs to flag through this forum for when you report back to council on the operations of the panel, that, you know, perhaps there needs to be a broader look at some of the spatial application of some of the zoning.
Yeah, so I might just seek clarification, I guess, exactly what the issue is. Is it more to do with the building height, the matter of the single-storey building height limit? Because that, just for your context as well, it's interesting sort of hang up from the development plan that there is a single-storey height limit in Angaston, Nuriupta and Tanunda, but curiously we don't have that same height limit in Lyndoch and Williamstown.
Yeah, we've got nuances like that on KI.
Yeah, so I guess if it's a matter of the height that you're specifically talking to, the TNV that currently applies.
I think the issue though, Aaron, is that when the code, the zoning that goes with the code was brought into effect, and I think others made the comment better than I can, it was a one-size-fits-all approach, and without due consideration being given to the precise location of the zone boundary. If this was a neighbourhood zone, not an established neighbourhood zone, and with probably another 20 or 30 allotments added to that, to adequately and properly reflect that this part of the zone has a different character, we wouldn't be here talking about it. So I think there is merit in the council being requested to consider the zone anomaly that exists in this part of Angaston. There might be other zone anomalies in other townships too. By the way, I'm no longer sitting on the West Torrens panel. Every agenda had a provision in its structure for potential policy implications, amendments, so that issues such as this, there was always a spot on the agenda for these sorts of issues to be raised, so that could be raised by the panel of probably every 12 months, I think it is at West Torrens, so that the issues that have been brought to the panel's attention through their assessment of applications can be brought up for consideration by way of policy review.
Sure.
That's all right. Yep.
Thank you. Thank you, through the chair. I just wondered if this is something that could be potentially, as you said, reviewed. I absolutely concur with what Graham just said. And also potentially in the future, would it be suitable to bring it before Chambers for their opinion, or not at all? Because this is more of a procedural planning matter, I would have thought. But I wondered if it will be a good fit for the development strategy that's happening at the moment for the region and the reviews that are happening, and to see if it could be potentially incorporated into any changes they're looking forward for future development with the region for consistency.
Yeah, I think this ties in with, and it's something we haven't really spoken to with council at great length yet, but as part of the Great Adelaide Regional Plan, there is desire for councils to embark on doing their own local housing strategies. So that will provide an opportunity for council to, I guess, further look at what opportunities there are for encouraging and accommodating for infill But the growth strategy that I spoke to earlier, the phase one of the actions is to focus more specifically in relation to infill and trying to find that appropriate balance between supporting appropriate infill outcomes and retention of character. The policy that's there at the moment has tried to do that, arguably, but I think it's a pretty blunt instrument to have a single-storey height limit, and especially in some areas where infill will be encouraged or should be encouraged. So that's something I think the Chamber will need to consider further. I think there's further work we need to do, though, to actually analyse probably the age of housing stock, the character of these particular neighbourhoods, and where is it appropriate to look at supporting further infill. So yeah, it's a piece of work I think needs to continue to happen.
We can create from council, we can actually request a code amendment or a consideration, can't we, for our region with more directive there. That's pretty much what you just said, isn't it? That we can, in layman's terms, sorry. Thank you.
So yeah, the ultimate probably outcome would be or need to be a code amendment to amend policies in the code, but there would need to be further investigations that would need to be done, and that possibly could be through the local housing strategy to actually underpin or carry out investigations that support the policy changes that would need to be made to the code.
Thank you, Aaron. Because there's also another, I won't say a hole in the code or a roadblock, but another issue that's arisen over the years with a common theme with planning applications that have come before the panel. And that's been a code matter purely too, with its application and outcomes. So yeah, there are a few things I think that could definitely be discussed moving forward that might help the region with development and planning, both in the rural sector and residential. Yeah, quite relevant, potentially. Thank you.
It should be recorded, shouldn't it? Briefly, like.
Sorry, yeah, the meetings are now recorded, so as per the operating procedures of the panel, but we will minute this matter. So I think the matter that's been raised is that the panel wishes to highlight existing policy inconsistencies relating to single-storey height limits within the township of Angston. And I think that's specifically relating to the established neighbourhood zone, and that there is opportunity to review that policy as part of further policy work or part of its policy program.
Sarah, I will come to you, but Tom's been waiting patiently for about 10 minutes, so I will just Tom first and then Sarah.
Only because he's well mannered.
Just a really quick one. I just say, like, just a bit of caution in how we kind of, well, from my experience of dealing with like policy changes that have a lot of process to go before that gets considered. I guess in the Barossa there's probably one mindset here, then 50-50 of the other mindset as well. So whilst we can provide hope that it would be ideal to have policy changes and updates, there's a real potential that 51% of people say, no, we don't want that, we want to keep it as it is and no change. Because the fact is these areas, some of these houses are starting to get to the end of life or end of life beyond, maintenance repairs, that ideally they'll be knocked down and rebuilt. So then they'll make better use of their space as well. So there's also that argument from that side of things. So just kind of, saying caution there.
Yeah, I think that's why it's got to be subject to investigations, like Aaron said. Now, Sarah, you're also waiting patiently, so your turn. Yes.
Yes, always. This was a really hard one all round for everybody, but I also am quite cognizant of the dwellings that are adjoining the subject land that are, the big McMansion rendered white buildings that are quite dominant in that streetscape. And I know, Graham, I think you hit it on the head in terms of we have to look at the streetscape in which the dwelling presents to, and I get that. But when you've got the same zoning, the same overlays applying, and you're getting a different outcome, we've just got to be careful of the perception of that and how the courts will perceive that, because obviously they will ask that question. Why did you allow it to go in this street? Which one could argue that was probably vacant land not that long ago. Those houses are quite new as well. We just need to be cognizant of that as a panel as well. I'm hearing this through other panels that, you know, I know, and I'm not development assessment centric, so please correct me, those that are, but precedence doesn't really come up as much in South Australia as what I'm used to in Queensland. Once case law is done and it goes through the courts, then it becomes something that we can hold decisions to or align decisions with. But I do think that because of these anomalies, more and more councils are starting to grapple with this. And I'd be interested, maybe it's something I can flick through to Gavin, interested to hear what a legal advisory would put on this, because if you look at all the overlays and look at this, and this is no fault of yourself, Aaron or Tom, is that we put a lot of weight in that character overlay, and yes, it didn't quite meet every policy, but it met most of all the others in the overlays. And, you know, overlays trump zone, and I get that, and I get the hierarchy of policy as well, but it just sort of seems that sometimes that weighting is put over a specific overlay than others, and I think that's a bit of a dangerous approach sometimes.
No, thank you. I think that's good commentary. There were some nods and thought-provoking comments, I think. And I do remember, I think I recall when the code was being introduced, there was some questions around what happens if one overlay conflicts with another, and there wasn't really clear guidance around that. It's simply up to the relevant authority to weigh up in the circumstances where the priority lies, and, you know, maybe that's a good thing, maybe it isn't. Yeah, no, look, I think that's been a good discussion. I think we can leave it, my personal view is I think we can leave it in council's hands to, or the administration's hands to consider drafting something, and perhaps it's as simple as suggesting that or this particular zone applying in this locality be reviewed at a future point. In respect of the built form outcomes that are sought. And that I'm probably not as good as wordsmithing on the go as you are, but that might be sufficient. So unless there are any further comments, is there any other business from the staff? Yeah.
I think just a reminder that we do have some apologies, I believe, coming up for the next couple of meetings. I think they've already been noted, but whether we just note them again just for purpose of future meeting schedules and planning.
To be on the 7th of October, I'll be back. I'm coming back on the 2nd of October.
Especially
I'm going to Canada and Alaska.
Oh,
So,
so jealous.
Right.
Jealous.
I'll probably be out of brain. So anyway, I'll be back. If you were thinking I will be back for that meeting.
Great, that's great. So was it November though? There was a meeting. I think it's Jeff.
Yeah, so I'm away. I'm away for the November meeting, but I will be back on the Sunday before the December meeting. So I'm sure, so long as you don't make it an agenda that's hundreds of pages long, I'm sure I'll be able to read that. Yeah. So I'm back on the 30th of November, so I'll just miss the November meeting. That's all. Yeah.
Yeah, I might just add that at this stage it's looking like we will have an item for October. The other matter I'm mindful we need to bring back is a report for the panel to appoint a deputy. So as part of changing the operating procedures, we agreed, or the panel agreed to have a deputy, which was a sound decision. So there would need to be that decision made, and that would be timely given that Jeff will be on leave in November.
Okay, excellent. All right, thank you. Now there are no confidential reports. Next meeting is due to be held on the 7th of October. So I'm happy to declare this meeting closed. It's 9 minutes past 7. Thank you to members for your